Hey guys, welcome to Tome Traveler. This week, we are dusting off our garrote watches and our communicator cufflinks and jumping to 2002 into a world of action and espionage in Spycraft.
I love this series. This is probably one of my favorite series. It is a D20 game, but there's something about it that just captures so much for me. Now, I love spy stuff in general. Mm-hmm. It's probably one of my favorite genres of film.
Yeah, I tend to say that it's one of my favorite genres in film and television, but I have never watched an entire Bond movie. For some reason, he does not interest me whatsoever. So I always kind of shy away from saying that spy stuff is my favorite because I don't watch James Bond.
But I don't think that's so bad because, James Bond is the quintessential, if you go back to the Sean Connery age, it's the quintessential schlocky kind of spy stuff. You then have I consider Pierce Brosnan and on to be the new generation of James Bond because they went a little less schlocky and went towards a lot more action. Mm-hmm. And I think there's room for both those in that. But there's so many things. And I also consider heist movies and things of that nature to somewhat be espionage because a lot of the same skills are used.
Right, I do enjoy stuff like that. Ocean's 11 is one of my favorites.
And so, I think of Sterling Archer from the TV show Archer. I mean, granted,
not PG-13, but it is one that we really enjoy.
Oh yeah, but it's spy, but it is kind of more of a slapstick kind of comedy situational. Yeah. Ocean's 11, you mentioned,
right?
You're a huge fan of.
As far as movies go, I really like. I think the first spy movie that I ever bought with my own money was Spy Games with Robert Redford and Brad Pitt. Mm-hmm. And then we've been watching on television, on Netflix, we've been streaming a lot of Blacklist, which is FBI based, but it deals with a lot of espionage type groups and individuals. And there is a spy presence in there. I liked Chuck, which was a goofy spy comedy that also dealt with government agencies being involved in that. But no, anything like that, I threw in What's Up, Tiger Lily, because that was probably one of the first spy movies that I'd ever seen, even though it was a Woody Allen parody of a Japanese spy movie. But What's Up, Tiger Lily is one of my favorite, because culinary espionage is real, folks, and it's very serious.
Given an idea really quick of when this came out, so it's 2002, and this is the Axis of Evil is coined by President Bush.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're looking at just a few months after 9/11. So the world was kind of in a very tumultuous period, and at least not the world necessarily, I guess, but America specifically.
Yeah, well, it definitely set up pretty much global politics. Since then have been affected by it. The United States invaded Afghanistan in a war that is still being fought today, almost 16 years later. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Alderac Entertainment Group released Spycraft.
Which I didn't know that was what AEG stood for. I've seen the AEG moniker and logo on so many things, many board games. In fact, I see right on a board game right there on our shelves, but I did not know that that's what it stood for. Every time I see Alderac Entertainment Group, because I have seen that listed other places, for some reason my brain associates it incorrectly with Star Wars because of Alderaan.
Yeah, no,
and that's what I always immediately envision in my head.
I honestly think that's probably why they went to just putting AEG as their logo, because that's what I thought when I first saw it. I was like, Alderac, Alderaan, Alder. There's got to be a story. Got to be a story there. But yeah, no, I am a huge fan of theirs, and obviously they are known for their board games nowadays. But they were involved in the release of several competing and really, in my opinion, strong RPGs. Stargate SG-1, which I do believe is, it's a great series. We'll probably touch on that one eventually. But the creator of Stargate SG-1 actually considers the game and the contents in the game to be part of the universe of Stargate. It has additional information in it. So that's pretty awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
The Legend of the Five Rings, which is a wonderful series. They went through, I think, 3 or 4 editions while they were on AEG.
Yeah, I believe that's right.
And now they're bought out by Fanatic
Fantasy Flight.
Fantasy Flight, thank
has
you,
it now,
yes. Seventh Seas, and later Swashbuckling Adventures, which have gone on, and John Wick, who was with AEG, has now taken over that title. Mm-hmm. And Farscape.
Well, he was the original writer for AEG for Seventh Sea, or he had sold it to, I'm not sure the situation there, but he was the original writer, and then he just took it and they partnered with him, and now he's got John Wick Presents.
Yeah, which is, which this year, in my humble opinion, kind of swept the Ennies at the 2017 Gen Con. So, big congrats to him. And Farscape, which is one of my favorite sci-fi franchises. I loved Jim Henson Puppet Works being involved with him. But I mean, these are major titles, in my opinion, for pop culture, and that AEG was involved in them and produced them. I think is this.
Well, I think it established them as a pretty big name in the gaming industry, and we'll talk a little bit more about them later. But one of their titles that they released, obviously, was Spycraft. Okay. And I know very little about this until I sat down to kind of look into it. It looks like you have, sitting on the table in front of me, several of the books. We have never played this together, but and I can probably think of some reasons why, but I'm not entirely sure why. But, as far as I can tell, Spycraft is the Bond-esque cinematic super spy counterpart to the other kind of half, or the campaign setting Shadow Force Archer, which was released with it. So there's the silver books and the black books. Yeah,
and each has its own feel for the world. I think, from what I remember of reading a little bit of Archer, it's a little darker.
Yeah, no, it's the. If the Wikipedia page can be believed, it is it focuses on it like a global shadow conspiracy in an Earth where psionics are real. It's more mystical. It's a little bit more paranormal, and it focuses on each of the parts of that. I believe it's called the Archer. Oh, I can't remember the name of it, like the Archer Contingency or something like that. I can't remember the name of it. But yeah, Spycraft itself is more the
classic homage to the genre in and of itself.
Right. And all I can think of besides James Bond for the kind of spies that I imagine in Spycraft are all comedy guys like Get Smart and Maxwell Smart, those kinds of guys with their phones in their shoes. And
well, there's also that feeling, especially if you look at some of the main books, the Splinter Cell games, the Tom Clancy kind of characters. I mean, it covers that entire wide range of basis, but it introduced some new stuff to it, and I think that it changed mechanics, because I mean, again, this is the D20 system based.
Just like our last game. And it's funny because we, in our current gaming group, often talk about leaving the D20 system behind, but we are, going through this for the show, there are so many games that are based on the D20 system, because it really is a good system, and people may not like it, or they feel like they're going away from it, or they want to explore more things, because there are some other really great systems out there that we like.
Oh yeah.
D20 core system was used for so much when it was...
And, it was a huge part of gaming history. It opened the door for all these things, because... If the D20 system did not exist, would these have just ended up as books? Right. Would these have ended up as something else? I mean, that's the big question. And so I'm very happy. And I don't have either I hate the D20 system, or they're the people that have that I will only play the D20 system.
Yeah.
I'm not that kind of person. I'm like, the D20 system had such great effects on the gaming market, and a lot of people would not be here if not for it.
Well, yeah, because it provided being, and I know much less about the OGL and the D20 system trademark license or whatever it was called, being something that people could take an idea that they had, but they don't have the mind for game mechanics.
Yeah.
But they want to take an established game mechanic that people are familiar with and overlay it with their the world that they want to create. And I think that that's something nice about the OGL and the D20 STL. you can know very little about game mechanics and how to make a game and how to build rules that actually work and are playable.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about that if you have a world to create. And I know other people have done that with the storyteller system and other things like that, but so I think it's great to see a system, whether you like it or not. This system has allowed a lot of games to come onto the scene and introduce people who may not be willing to play D&D, might be willing to play Spycraft.
And that's one of those things with the D20 system. This is something that I've been claiming, and that is that you have to provide a product that is good enough to justify its purchase, so that people aren't having to create their own thing. They look at it and they're like, oh, this is exactly what I want. Oh, it's got all this information that I would have never dreamed of.
And I can use this book that I already have for the core mechanics.
Exactly.
I don't have to buy a new rule set.
Exactly. Spycraft, I love. I feel like they set out to do it, and it is a spectacular book. So, I mean, the core book is a hardbound, and it has a great aesthetic to it if you actually are looking through it. It's black and white text on white page with gray and silver. There's actually silver lining in some of the artwork and in the page itself. That really gives it this beautiful aesthetic. I mean, this is a really well-made book. It's easily readable and very easy to follow. And to be honest, I mean, I feel like the layout in this book is better than the layout in 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons, which is where the origin of the D20 license came from. I just think I think it's brilliant. Not only do you have this core book, but then they put out additional books and so much great information. It's one of those things where you can't help but justify how good this is. A couple things that they did differently, and they would have to. First and foremost, there's the race aspect. In Player's Handbook for Dungeons & Dragons, there are core races that the players take upon themselves: elves, dwarves, whatever. Now, they have kind of pulled that out of this because this is based a little bit more on real world to some extent.
This is supposed to be Earth, it's not a fantasy setting. I mean, there are fantastical elements to the setting, but in reality, this is supposed to be humans dealing with global and foreign power.
Absolutely. And so that mechanic of race has gone away, and instead what they did is they put departments in there. I like this because the way it interplays with class. But so each department, there's a research department, there's a wetworks department, there's more of the classic Black Ops, espionage, never get seen kind of department. So there's all these departments. And then you have your classes, which are things such as, enforcer, the wheelman, all these other things.
Right.
And so I feel like all of a sudden, wow, I can be a wheelman, but instead of just being the guy out working for Black Ops or something, I'm working for the secret division that puts into play new powers and new equipment. So I'm kind of like a test driver.
Right.
And so I think, there's endless possibility in this game where Dungeons & Dragons, there are iconics. I mean, you open up the book and you can't help but say the elves are rangers. Yeah. The gnomes are going to be spellcasters. The dwarves are either, they're going to be craftsmen with their big hammers, and they're going to be decked out in armor as a cleric, paladin, or warrior, whatever. And so in that, in Dungeons & Dragons, there's this element that is always kind of in the background, but in Spycraft, you are opened up into a world of endless possibility, in my opinion.
Right.
Other things, I mean, obviously, modern skills.
Yeah, computers, electronics, things like that.
And defense is a new mechanic in this, which I love because all of a sudden, getting hit no longer is about what kind of armor or what armor you're not wearing. It's all about class level and other things.
Right.
A chase element, which is obviously a big part.
Every spy movie or
oh my goodness,
or heist movie. I just thinking of, I think the Italian Job.
Yeah, absolutely.
has a famous car chase in it.
My favorite car chase, Ronin.
But yeah, so there is. Yeah, I read that there was a high-speed chase system, and which was later adopted by White Wolf for Eonverse.
Yep. And wounds and vitality, which is an alternate to hit points all of a sudden. There's this thing that is kind of the bullets grazing you versus the bullets hitting you.
Right.
The last thing, which is something that, a lot of people are thinking, oh, this is a new mechanic in gaming, action dice. Right now, in games that are coming out now, there are dice and other things that you can add to your roll, that people are just like, oh, this is so cool. So I'm going to spend this point and I'm going to get another dice and I'm going to roll it and it's going to add to my roll. And in Spycraft, they did that with action dice. So that's like, this is almost 10, 15 years before the current mechanic that is right now the big craze.
All right. Yeah, I know Dead of Winter uses action dice. Every die is an action die in some of the board games that we have. But
games like Star Trek, here's a coin or here's a dice and I'm going to use it to add to it.
Okay, so like a momentum or a determination situation.
Yeah, this is very similar. I mean, it's a set pool that you're either adding or subtracting from and having the opportunity to do these cool things.
Right, okay, yep.
So
it's almost kind of like inspiration in D&D.
Yeah,
where
a little bit.
Somebody is able to give you a die to add to a certain check. So. Yeah.
And so, but it is a very select pool, and it's a pool your character has.
Right, and it regenerates each session, not like day in game.
Now, the other interesting thing about Spycraft, the first book, is that you will open it up and you will not find money. You're not going to be able to open it up and look at prices for what it is to purchase something.
Right.
Instead, what they have in the game is called gear points. And gear points are based on your level, how good of you did on previous missions. All these things come together to create your gear points, and you take those gear points and then you have the opportunity to get all the gear you want. So whatever guns you're going into combat with, what neat little toys that you have, all these things are done with the gear point system. Now, and it makes sense because, quite frankly, we can go on the internet and look up whatever the cost is of something, or if you're trying to buy a briefcase, you have a general idea of what it costs to buy a briefcase or get a suit of good clothes or whatever. I mean, it's based in this world.
Yeah.
So there is that element. But I think that is very creative and new, and it's very enjoyable. The first edition came out, and then second edition came out.
In 2005, it looks like.
Yeah, in 2005.
Spycraft 2.0.
2.0. It changed the visual aesthetic of it.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't like the looks of 2.0 as much as I like the what's now known as classic Spycraft looks more spy-like. I don't know what it is about Spycraft 2.0, but it feels a little bit more fantasy. I don't know, it feels a little strange.
The art direction went more hard lines with more of almost comic or even cartoon look to it.
Yeah.
And both Roxy and I do kind of lay out and look at these kind of things, and it wasn't an aesthetic that we like, but it's not like that makes it a bad game.
No, not at all. It changed. I mean, we have some other games here on the table that I'm seeing right now that I'm like, I would never pick that up. I would never look if I said it. But I am very much a judge a book by its cover kind of consumer. If it doesn't grab me when it's on the shelf, it's not going to go in my cart. And I have regretted that many times with board games that friends have brought over that I walked past on the shelf because I was like, this looks boring. And then they bring it over and I love it, and it's not the design's fault really. It's my inability to give it a chance. So.
Well, it's, right off the bat, I can think of one, and it's actually by the same company, and that's Smash Up. The aesthetic visually of the box, I was not drawn to it.
Yeah, and I've even seen people play Smash Up before on, I believe it's on Tabletop on one episode. Maybe not. Anyway, I think I've seen people play it before, but for some reason it just didn't catch my attention. But we did get a chance to play it ourselves, and it actually felt a little bit more complex than I had initially believed.
And it was very enjoyable. And it's one of those games that has endless variety. So, kudos to them. It's one of those things where not every game's going to jump out at everybody. Right. But it's definitely one of those things where, it's definitely an example I can point out for that.
Right. And I had never seen Spycraft 2.0 because I believe I don't think you have any 2.0 stuff.
Buy any of them. The 2.0 core book is a little bit bigger and a little thicker. And they put out less books for 2.0.
Right.
And for a very obvious reason. And that is that they canceled the license the year after 2.0 came out.
Yeah, it wasn't very long after either. And it's good to note that Spycraft 2.0 is a I won't say very different, but it is not classic Spycraft. It is.
Oh no.
It incorporated a lot of changes. It wasn't under the D20 STL. It was under the OGL. And again, I'm not too sure on the differences there, unless D20 refers more to 3rd edition and OGL is 3.5. But
there are a couple differences. Like the D20, it's about the logo. It was literally about. I mean, if you look through the stack books we got here,
the D20 logo.
D20 logo. I carved it into a bench that I made because I mean it's a big part of the history of gaming. The thing is that aesthetic, that logo was all about capturing people's attention, and to get that logo you had to get Wizards of the Coast's permission to produce that game. The open gaming license, as long as you follow the letter of the law of the open gaming license, you can use it. You don't need anyone's permission. You don't need anyone to pat you on the back or anything else. So it's just a difference in the level thereof.
Okay. But it did incorporate some mechanics changes. It introduced character origins. This is all stuff that I just read online today. So, so I don't have a first-hand knowledge of any of this stuff. And if you've never played 2.0, it looks like it incorporates character origins. Mm-hmm. It incorporates a simplified gear system, brand new skills list. Challenge ratings are a thing of the past. In it, they don't use, as far as experience goes, it looked like it would have each enemy or whatever would have a
challenge rating. Yeah.
It wouldn't have a challenge rating anymore, and now it has just like an experience total.
See, that's interesting because I actually liked the challenge rating in Spycraft 1, and it's something that I think for players like me just jumps out at you because there is actually a write-up in there for dealing with enemies non-violently. Mm-hmm. There is even a XP award for turning an enemy to your side without fighting them.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just like, wow, that's something you don't see.
Yeah.
Usually that's, GMs have to kind of make that up off the top of their head and say, well, you did this, so here I'm throwing you a bone.
Yep.
But this actually has a table, to figure out the math, based on the challenge rating of the character that you just converted.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, so it was a different game, and then AEG, it looks like sometime in 2006, they pretty much decided to get out of the role-playing game, and they dropped most of its titles, including Spycraft. And that's when they started focusing more on card games and board games and like Smash Up and Love Letter. Dice City, one of our favorites, the one that I can see on the shelf right now, is The Captain is Dead.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a new one that we really like, but that's what they shifted their focus to. They didn't stay with the role-playing games.
It was so smart because looking back at it, there were so many companies that started up during the D20 craze. During 3rd edition and when the OGL was around, there were so many companies that just hopped on that bandwagon, and like Kesner Company, but several companies, just barely eked by.
Yeah.
And many of the creators of these books next to us, they're just not around anymore.
Yeah.
So it's kind of sad, but AEG made the smart business decision, and they had already gotten a little bit into board games, and they just put their weight behind that.
Mm-hmm. And they've done very well.
They have done incredibly well. And obviously, I'm looking at the shelves, and ever so often I'll just say, logo. Yeah, there they are again.
Yeah. And it's one thing where they made a decision to go away from it, but they didn't just let those properties die, which is something that I can respect and appreciate as a consumer, because there are other companies that will take a creative property to the grave, and they won't let anybody do anything else with it.
Goodness, yeah.
It's, fans of the properties are going, come on, please let somebody do something with this. One of those things that I mentioned in our last show is Mass Effect. I feel like BioWare is going to cling to Mass Effect until it dies, and I'm just like, please let me have something else. If you're not going to do anything with it, let somebody else do something with it. But that's for another show, another time. But yeah, they ended up letting Spycraft go to the co-authors of Spycraft 2.0, who left AEG and formed
Crafty Games. Which I love it. I feel like it's a nod both to the product and to the fans for the community that formed around Spycraft. Mm-hmm. Their big game afterwards was Fantasy Craft, which is again kind of that homage nod to where its origins.
Right. Yeah. Fantasy Craft was built off of the Spycraft rule set. It was kind of an expansion that brought in the fantasy races and classical. I believe it said classical Greek kind of. Non-human races.
And It had a similar art inspiration to it. I've actually seen it when it came out. There were several companies tried to hop on the, when 4th edition came out for Dungeons and Dragons, several companies tried to put out their own take on a fantasy role-playing system.
Right.
There is obviously Paizo that did their huge mega blockbuster Pathfinder. There was Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition, and there was Fantasycraft, and there were a couple others that were a little bit smaller, but Fantasycraft actually did really well. Okay. It won a few Ennies when it came out and has a very strong following still. Okay. But one of the things that I think really sets apart Crafty Games is that they have pretty much gone directly into the digital market. They are all about PDFs and purchasing online.
They kept Spycraft alive primarily through PDF releases. There were some print releases, but most of it is PDF releases, and we'll talk a little bit more about that for those of you that might be interested in playing Spycraft that haven't seen it at your FLGS but are interested in getting your hands on some of the stuff. But before we get to that, the Living Spycraft.
Living campaigns are, for some reason, and I'm just not a living campaign person myself, but we can get around to that some other time. There are people who love it, and one of our local game stores, they have an extremely strong living campaign core group that moves from living campaign to living campaign.
Now, this would be like Pathfinder Society?
Yeah, this is Pathfinder Society.
Adventures Guild and things like that? Okay.
Exactly. So this is an opportunity to get in on what I guess is also called organized play.
Right.
So,
and I know that when we went to Gen Con, there was an entire room that was literally Pathfinder Society, and it was massive. It was a huge hall dedicated to tables of their living campaign and their Pathfinder Society. And maybe even Starfinder Society now.
Yeah, they have actually started that up, and they actually had games there being ran for it. We just didn't sign up for it because we were doing other things.
Yeah. But yeah, so they did Living Spycraft, organized play, part of the Role Playing Game Association's network of living campaigns. And it started with the release of the book in 2002. It did convert to 2.0 in 2005, and then Crafty Games put the kibosh on it in 2007.
Which, it's one of those things, I'm certain the materials are still out there because I still have materials from the origins of the Pathfinder Society. I've still got year one stuff. So if that is available out there in PDF, I know that the Crafty Games, stuff must still be out there as well.
Somewhere.
And if you're a GM that is trying to run material, it's a great thing to do. Now, at the same time, I started off with actually a good friend of ours named Sam. He ran Spycraft for me. I played a character who was basically Wetworks Black Ops, ninja-esque character. I loved the heck out of it, and I loved it. We had interdepartmental drama. That was kind of my introduction to it, and I always wanted to bring it back. And what I ended up doing was eventually I picked up Spycraft. They had the books at my local half-price bookstore. And so this stack here is all stuff that I had picked up there, usually for about $5 a copy. I really feel like Half Price does not know what they have sometimes, but I'm also biased because I'm a big role player.
Well, and I don't think many Half Price bookstore places exist anymore, so they probably have undersold them. So at least not in this area. I have not. So I think there's one because I know Sam has gone looking for them before.
There's one about 5 miles from here. I enjoy this system, and I did a 1960s Spycraft, and I ran it for about 8 people. It was a very big table, probably bigger than necessary. And it was in the Cold War politic era. So Vietnam is going on, or you've basically got the post-World War II going into the Cold War, going into, the U.S. police actions. And I had this classic plot line right off the bat. What is it the bad guys have gotten a hold of? A nuclear device.
A nuclear device.
And they're holding the world hostage. I had players who had the opportunity to make themselves based on various nationalities, different spy networks coming together to basically deal with this global threat.
Right.
Mossad alongside CIA, alongside MI6. And it was this over-the-top game, but that's what I love about Spycraft it is super over-the-top, wonderful fun. And so
that's what's nice about espionage in popular media, though.
Yeah.
It's all ridiculously over the top. I mean, even I believe, which it didn't look like something I would enjoy, but Atomic Blonde.
Yeah.
That is a female super spy. And just from the trailers on television and the ads, over the top, ridiculous amounts of it's like, do people actually do this? And who knows? I'm just a civvy. But some of these things, even in Archer, the places they go, Blacklist, it feels like Star Wars, where suddenly the entire galaxy
this can't be real.
The entire well, I know Star Wars isn't real, but the entire galaxy is 30 minutes away. I mean, somehow they managed to be at the right place 5 minutes from now. That's 2,000 miles away. It's just ridiculous levels of.
There's a bomb in Buenos Aires. I'm already there.
Yeah, I'll be there in time. I'm already on a plane.
So spy stuff is over the top. And here's the question that is going to get asked with our next episode. And that is, we're going to be going in for the episode after this one, and we are going to be making characters for Spycraft. And obviously, to me, the question is, does the game do what it sets out to do? Can you make that character that is kind of a little bit over the top, doing all the same crazy stuff you see in the movies or TV shows? So I think that is probably what we're going to be doing next episode. So I hope you all have enjoyed. This is Passion Nerdly. I'm John.
Roxy.
And we are so happy to have you all here listening to us. Thank you very much.
This has been a production of the Southgate Media Group. For more podcasts like this one, head over to southgatemediagroup.com.